So, Andrew.
Yes.
I have a bit of a puzzle for you.
I like enigmas, so...
What do Latasha Harris, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the word move have in common?
No idea.
I figured.
No idea, and partly
you
I'm
wouldn't know.
so oblivious of some of it that... yeah.
Well, the thing that they have in common is all three of these things came up on my Facebook feed today from my friends posting about Black History Month.
Uh-huh.
Do you know any of the stories behind that?
Absolutely no, and I'll be also thankful if you can help me to a little better understand the whole idea of Black History Month. Of course, I've been part of it, being here in the United States now for more than almost 2 decades, but it would be great to get some insight.
Sure.
So,
what do you know so far? When somebody says it's Black History Month, what do you think of?
my primary information was that it is a celebration of our African American brothers and sisters, focusing primarily on their achievements and the brighter side of their history.
Yeah.
So, am I right, or?
You're pretty right. I like to think of it, as you said, as a celebration of the history and culture of African Americans or Black folks in the United States. I know there are some other countries that also use February to celebrate Black history. And I think this is an important time for us to really honor and remember what Black history is. And I think that's important in terms of remembering all of the positive things. But I also think that it's important in remembering some of the less positive, some of the more difficult things. And it's only been 7 days or so, but I've already learned a ton of stuff. For instance, Latasha Harris, who I mentioned earlier, I didn't know about this at all, but someone posted about her, and I checked it too online. She was a 15-year-old girl who, in 1991, was at a Korean food mart, and she was accused of stealing orange juice, and there was a scuffle involved, and the wife of the owner of the shop shot her, and she was killed. And her death was one of the major factors in the start of the LA riots. A lot of times, I think most people associate that with what happened with Rodney King being beaten, but she was a major part of that, and I'd never heard her name before. Or, did you know that Tulsa, Oklahoma had a Black Wall Street? Were you familiar with that?
No.
I had heard about that not that long ago. But they had hotels and movie theaters. They had indoor plumbing at a time where not even all white people had indoor plumbing. There were lawyers there and business owners and doctors, and there were Black millionaires living there. And it was in a neighborhood called Greenwood. And in 1921, on May 31st, a young Black man was accused of something with a white woman. It might have been something sexual. I'm not 100% sure. But they protected him from being lynched. And in retaliation, they burned they burned the city to the ground. 35, or the neighborhood rather, 35 city blocks were destroyed. 800 people injured. 300 people died in that. And I didn't learn about that till maybe 2 years ago.
You know, from my background, what is the word genocide comes immediately to my mind when you hear about these major events, you know, of this kind, because that's an attempt to eliminate complete section of society. And
what did you hear about Philadelphia?
Oh, yeah.
So for those who don't know, in 1985, which is the year I was born, there was an organization called MOVE, and they were a Black liberation group. They focused on not only liberation for Black people, but also on environmentalism and animal rights. And on May 13th of that year, there was a standoff at their row house in Philadelphia with 500 cops. And you know how this...
is it that event when they were bombing them from helicopters? Or?
They dropped bombs on this row house, and the firefighters... it was unclear whether or not they refused or were not permitted to, but they didn't put out the flames. 65 houses burned down from that, and not a single person was criminally charged for that. And that was something, I only know about that because I have a friend who is a comedian, and that's part of, I know it sounds weird, but he has that as part of his routine. Because that's what we can do with Black history. We can take these really difficult, painful things, and we can remember them, and we can be honest about them, and use them as a way to move forward, as a way to heal. As
at the same time, we can celebrate achievements.
Oh yeah.
Especially over against this dark part of the history. But I wanted to mention, you know how I heard about that Philadelphia event?
How did you hear?
From my Presbyterian minister friend.
That's awesome.
When I first landed in the United States, I worked for denominational headquarters, and he mentioned to me when I was saying back then, it was 99, 2000, and I was saying, how is it possible in the United States? And he said, oh, many things are possible. And he mentioned exactly this example of brutality of the regime, you know, of the system, which is just absolutely unjust.
Yeah. And I don't love that it happened, but I love that you learned about it. And I love that you learned about it from a minister.
Yeah.
I like to think that the church is a place where we try to tell the truth. Yeah. We are honest about our witness and our faith in Jesus Christ. We are honest about the morals and call towards righteousness and justice that the Bible gives us, that Christ has given us. In churches like ours, we are honest about who we are as people, as a diverse group of people of different ages, races, backgrounds, gender identity, sexual orientations, all of that. And I think it's important for us to wrestle with some of these really difficult things that happened in history, just like we wrestle with the difficult things that happened in the Bible, so that we can get to the truth of the matter, just like we get to the truth of faith matters.
And I think that the faith is actually leading us towards being truthful.
Yes.
You know, because if we live in lie, then there is no hope for us.
Yes.
I think that honesty about our faith leads into honesty about our lives and honesty about the history. And, you know, not putting any kind of blinders towards our own behavior or blinders towards the behavior of our nation or state. I think that that's absolutely important and goes back to biblical faith and then through the tradition to our Calvinistic faith, because as Calvinists we know about our corruption, our sin, and that's the main influence over our lives, and if we don't name it, we cannot do anything about it.
Exactly. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so proud to be at a church like ours, why I'm proud to be a Christian person, to be able to face sin, such as racism and white supremacy, head on, and look at that history and to faithfully learn from it, which is why one of the things that we're doing for the month of February is reading Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson, which talks a lot about these issues of racism, of white supremacy, of unjust systems. But these stories are in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even today, that are still happening. These things are still happening. If you've been watching the news, we hear about people getting shot. We had the actor Jussie Smollett basically survive an attempted lynching. We have
terrorized.
we have Lord knows what's happening at this point in Virginia. And to be able to look at that history and see how it's informing what we're doing now, and to be able to talk about that, I think that's such a gift.
And that's also why I thought it was important to reach out at the end of our Black History Month and preach on my experience, very moving and visceral. I had when I went for a pilgrimage to Montgomery, Alabama, to that lynching memorial. And for me, it was exactly like that, almost like an arc, starting at a dark place and at the same time seeing the positive outcome, that the things are not forgotten, that they are being brought up, that they are remembered, and that we can have that kind of cathartic, very powerful memorial built right in the center where it all started.
Yeah, that's
to some degree.
That's absolutely amazing. Can I leave us on? I don't want to say a more positive note. I think our conversation has been generally positive, but can I leave us on a good note? Are you familiar with the ballerina Misty Copeland?
No. Tell me more.
So she is the first African-American prima ballerina of the American Ballet Theater.
That's great.
And somebody had posted an article on Facebook about black ballerinas that had come before her. And there was one, Raven Wilkinson, and she was the first African-American to dance with the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo, and that was in 1955. And Misty Copeland said that she cried upon hearing that history that she didn't know much about, and hearing about the fact that there was another woman in this so-called white ballet group who was a black woman who was dealing with the oppression and the discrimination. It really gave her a sense of her own history, and it made her feel a responsibility towards past and future brown ballerinas. So knowing that there was someone else who had been in her shoes and who had gone through the struggle and made it through, made her not only feel like she was going to make it through, but also that she had a responsibility to everyone around her.
Yeah. So, you know, recognizing that we are all of different colors, but we have the same heart, same aspirations, same hopes. And
a shared history.
And we share that history, and we need to own it.
Yes. May that be so.
Thank you.